Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Northern Arizona Rugby coach Kevin Harris. He'll break down the origins of the club and the basics of the sport. We'll then be joined by Sedona swim coaches Lauren Robinson and Keegan Moorcroft, who will talk about going from competitors to coaches. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Mingus Union cross-country coach Sierra Tibbs. She'll discuss how she plans to grow the program in her first year. All of that and a whole lot more right here on Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Mingus Union High School cross-country coach Sierra Tibbs. Coach Tibbs, welcome onto the show.
Thank you.
Well, we're very happy to have you. First and foremost, congratulations on completing the 2020 season. COVID was an absolute nightmare, but thankfully the cross-country season was able to start and finish with the new modified time. Of course, this season we're looking at a more normal year, which is great. But I thought we'd start out just kind of briefly. I've got my idea as to what cross country is. I see it more as distance running. I know there's a lot more to it than just that. So please, if you can, in just a couple minutes, just kind of give us the basis of what cross country is and how you guys compete.
Yeah, so cross country, definitely a lot of people don't like it because it's all distance. But there's more of an art to it, and there's a strategy. So it's a team sport through and throughout, top 7 score. So you definitely, as an athlete, want to be in that top 7, trying to compete and get your team points and also get your team ranking as the meets go on, and especially in state. State is a big thing out here. So yeah, that's just cross country, and we do a lot of distance running. We do a lot of CrossFit stuff. Swimming's good, biking's good, stuff like that, just to try to get that endurance piece. Primarily is what cross country is made up of, is endurance.
Now, I know competition wise, in terms of just from the research that I've done before this interview, I know competition wise it's based off time. The fastest time gets you a certain amount of points at state. I think it's like the lowest points as a team wins you state, and you want to make sure you finish first. So I'm curious, when you're coaching the sport, are you focusing on speed or longevity? Because you don't want your players full on sprinting right when the race starts. You want them to be able to go throughout the duration of the course. But I'm curious, where is that focus on speed and longevity?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little bit of both. You definitely want speed, but you also want that good pace. So a lot of athletes try to start out fast, maintain a quick pace, and then obviously finish in a sprint. So there is definitely a balance of both of those mixed in together. The best runners I have seen and have experienced definitely maintain a very, very quick pace. So you kind of have to feel, and that's what we're going to do this year, is try to individually find everyone's balance, whether I know Caesar and McKenna, they're fast starters. And so that's good for them. Whereas some other ones need to kind of work up into that speed. So it definitely is a balance, and it's definitely dependent on each individual as itself.
You talk about some of those individuals. I mean, who are some of these kids that are coming out for cross country? Is it full-time runners? Are you getting a lot of the track team? Any football players? Any basketball players? who's coming out and participating in cross country?
Yeah. So as you probably know, this is my actually first year coaching cross country.
Oh.
I've been experienced with these athletes in track this past year and the year before COVID year. So Cesar Diaz, Isaac Reynolds, McKenna Bliss, and Maisie Babcock. Those are like the big ones. And then you have the Peterson girls, and all of those are our core track members.
Okay.
So those make up the distance team. We have Derek Light, who's new. He came out for track, and so he's going to join us. So there's a lot of good athletes that we've seen from track come into cross country.
Let's talk about that roster size, Coach. I mean, you mentioned a couple names there. It seems like the roster's pretty small with cross country. How many players do you have participating on your team?
We haven't actually met yet just because in the summer, but I'm guessing probably around 10 each, 10 girls, 10 boys, and we'll see whoever decides to show up or stick around, depending.
Again, we are speaking with Mingus Union High School cross country coach Sierra Tibbs. Coach, let's talk a little bit more technical here in terms of form. I've spoken to a couple swim coaches, obviously a different form of endurance, and they had talked about the difference between people who know how to swim and people who know how to competitively swim. I'm curious, is there a difference between, me kind of lightly jogging around the block, or compared to somebody participating in cross country? Is there a different running form that is taught, or is it pretty much you're focusing more on the cardio aspect?
Yeah, I mean, when you're competing, there's obviously a different level of exercise that you need to have during that. And so we actually are going to focus a lot on the heart rate. I think everybody can go out and run at a decent speed, decent pace. But when you get into competition, you definitely are now entering the more of like the training aspects. You need more speed, you need more endurance, you need more cardio. And then obviously heart rate plays into that. And so depending if you want a very fast, consistent pace, your heart rate needs to be at a certain beats per minute. And so, yeah, I definitely think it does. You can't just go out and run a cross country race. You can't just go out and, like I tell everyone, they're like, oh, I'm just going to go participate in a half marathon. I'm like, no, you can't just go out and run in a half marathon. You have to work your way up to it. You have to train. And that's the same for a cross country meet.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who would want to jump right into a half marathon. I know I'm more of a zero marathon kind of guy, but you obviously get a couple new faces this year. Where's an area that you see some new runners struggle in when they're kind of picking up the sport? Is there an aspect that that they struggle in a little bit?
Yeah, I have talked to a couple of the 8th graders coming into freshman year, and freshman year is hard in general, but you definitely level up in your sports as well as academics. And so I think some of the athletes I don't really think they know what they're in for as far as the level of high school, and it jumps same from high school to college, personally talking in that. But yeah, I think just the consistent speed and then the consistent mileage that they're going to have to face coming into high schools, I think will be a challenge, or it'll be a shock. Hopefully not a challenge.
Well, much like swim, like I mentioned, a little bit of a crossover with cross country. You guys go to meets, you compete against different schools, multiple schools. There isn't just one. So how do you prepare your team for a upcoming cross country meet?
Cross country meets, it's kind of at practice is going to be very similar to on the field. Same with probably mini sports. But yeah, so we're just going to get our mileage in, speed work in. We're going to try to run some of the courses ahead of time. I don't know about state. We'll try to get down to the state course and prep for that mentally and physically. But yeah, just working hard at practice, getting in your speed. Just giving it your all is going to pay off by the time meets come around.
Now, obviously, cross-country individual sports, you're coaching individuals, they're finishing individually. I'm going to stop saying individual, but there's obviously, there is still that team aspect there. And I asked some of the swim coaches this question. I want to ask you as well. How do you strike that balance between focusing on one player, but also emphasizing that team aspect of the sport?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I personally have always viewed it as a team sport, but it definitely comes down to individual. One runner is not going to be identical to the next runner. And so you definitely have to have that balance and understand that as you walk through life, you're going to have people walking alongside of you. And how do you work with that with your differences? And so I think the same thing goes for cross country, and just understanding that I'm going to give it my all, but also at the end of the day, it's for the team and it's for my school. And yes, you can have pride within yourself of how well you did. But at the end of the day, you have people supporting you, and it needs to be that main focus.
You talked a little bit about sort of the training that goes into cross country, mentioning CrossFit and a couple other activities, but I'm curious, where does that sort of strength training come in? Is there any kind of, obviously football players will do bench press or they'll strengthen certain areas of their body, but is there any kind of strength training that you guys do?
Yes, we do. We do work on those longer muscles. And so we don't do heavyweight. We do lesser weight, more reps. Lesser weight, more reps. So we definitely incorporate that. It's not going to be a daily thing, kind of like those heavier sports on like the muscle mass.
Right.
But we definitely need strength training to develop some of those muscles, endurance running. So.
Again, we were speaking with Mingus Union High School cross country coach Sierra Tibbs. Coach, this is your first season coaching the cross country team. Like you mentioned, you were helping out with track last season. Has this been something that you've wanted to do? Your husband, Hunter, was the former varsity head coach for the girls volleyball team last year at Mingus Union. I know he's not with the team anymore right now. But I was just curious if this something that you wanted to do? You wanted to take over a program when given the opportunity?
Yeah, it is actually funny. I have a past in cross country and track. And so I was interested to see kind of where life was going to take me as far as that goes. And so getting to know these runners through track have really, really sparked my interest in coaching. And so they were kind of the push towards me pursuing that career. And so I'm excited to step into it. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it, but I hope I can bring some of my experience from my personal life and running to the team and develop that even further. But yeah, I'm excited.
Now, just in case you do need the help, of course, your husband is also a former coach. I know Coach Tibbs would be more than happy to help out his wife with coaching the team if need be. But I want to ask a little bit more, just what sort of, is there any coaching philosophies that you follow? Anybody that you've kind of seen as a mentor who has given you kind of like, okay, this is the program or this is the way that I want to kind of teach or coach this sport?
Yeah, I mean, my coaches, I grew up in Indiana, and so I definitely have some role models in that area. But Dan Engler has been awesome, and he's going to be the assistant head coach this year with me. He has been around for many, many years, and he knows what he's doing. So he's been a huge help and a huge role model as far as like the fundamentals of cross country and just how it all works. And he knows the Mingus team really well, and he knows the history of it. And so just comparing and adapting to the changes that each year brings, he's been a really, really big role model in that. And also Molly Westcott has been very helpful in just watching her coach track. She does it flawlessly and effortlessly. And so it's been really fun to see her do that. And I've just picked up bits and pieces here and there as she's coaching, and I'm going to try to develop that into this year.
Yeah. Coach Molly Westcott is fantastic. She's great. She's been on the show before. She's very, very knowledgeable, phenomenal coach. And she coaches a really great track and field program there. And you're a cut from the same cloth, Coach Tibbs. I mean, the idea is you go over to cross country and help out the program. So I want to ask, what plans do you have long-term for this team? You're coming into your first season. I know you're kind of going to set the goals there for the squad, but I'm curious, where do you want this program to go?
I would love to see it flourish. These runners are super young. So I would love to see them kind of set that standard and bring more interest to the sport. I know sometimes it's like, oh man, it's your sport's punishment. Why are you guys running? But I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be, it's co-ed. That's fun. Not many sports can be co-ed. And so I have built so many great relationships just from running cross country and track. And so I want that to kind of be the vibe. And obviously the team aspect, I want them to gain more than just a good season. I want them to gain friendship and leadership and respect for the opposite gender. And it's such a good sport, and it's really shaped me in my years of running. So I hope that Mingus can do the same. And obviously I want Mingus to succeed, and I think they will this year. But.
No, I definitely know a state title is one of the things that you'd like to accomplish. hopefully in your very long career with coaching at Mingus Union High School and the cross-country team. Again, we were speaking with Mingus Union High School cross-country coach Sierra Tibbs. Coach Tibbs is stepping into her first year with the program. Let's talk, before we let you go, Coach, let's talk a little bit about the developmental aspect of cross-country. You said that you'd gotten a chance to talk with a couple 8th graders. Are there plans to continue to develop cross-country at the youth level, maybe start a club team, or I just going to be honest, I'm not sure if there's a JV team. You can clear that up right now. But I'm just curious, what are your plans to continue to grow the program at the younger level?
So the cool thing is I'm actually a teacher at the Verde Christian Academy over across the way. And so I teach 7th grade, but I also have middle schoolers. And so I've been already kind of spreading the word and getting the word out. I'm like, hey, I'm the coach. I'm the assistant coach. Like, hey, come out, try it out. And so I think I have the in that aspect. But yeah, I would love to see maybe a youth like fun run startup or something that Mingus can maybe be helping out at, and just those connections, creating those connections between the younger grades and in high school. I think that would be a huge thing, just the community piece between the two schools, mini schools around here could really bring some light to the cross-country team.
Again, I want to thank Mingus Union High School cross-country coach Sierra Tibbs. Coach Tibbs, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Best of luck on the upcoming season. We look forward to seeing the Marauders back out onto the, I don't want to say the track, but back out on the course running and doing long distance running for the cross-country team. We're excited to get started for the fall year. Thank you again, Coach Tibbs. When we come back, we'll be joined by Northern Arizona Rugby Club coach Kevin Harris to talk about Northern Arizona Rugby right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I am joined now by Northern Arizona Rugby coach Kevin Harris. Kevin, welcome on to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me on Off the Bench. This is great.
Very happy to have you. I heard about NAZ Rugby, or Northern Arizona Rugby, through an article written on the Arizona Daily Sun. And they mentioned about the club getting started. And I had no clue that rugby was even, I don't want to say a thing in Northern Arizona, but I didn't know that its popularity had made its way up here. I know that Northern Arizona University had a Quidditch team, which is completely different. We got a badminton team in Prescott. There's a little bit of diversity in terms of the sports, but rugby, which my first introduction to rugby was at Grand Canyon University, where I went to school. They've got a great club rugby team. And I still don't know really anything about rugby. So Kevin, if you can just kind of briefly give us just sort of the sort of base knowledge of how the sport of rugby is played.
Okay. Well, normally it's played with 15 players on each side. And it came out of England, and I think it was 1882 they kind of get it back to. And it began. And it's the father of soccer, or I'm sorry, the father of American football. American football, that was rugby was played exclusively in the United States, or that was a sport prior to American football. So there's some similarities, but it's kind of dwarfed into something a little different, American football. But our club here started in 1978, actually. Wow. And there's a club in Prescott, the Black Sheep. They're a great team. They've been playing for years.
Okay.
And they've been around for a long time. And that was a men's club in 1978. The women's side had their first match in 1985. We think it was 1985, 1984. They kind of come and go. Their original team name was the Timberdoodles. Now they're known as the Lady Land Sharks.
The Timberdoodles?
Yeah, it's a bird. It's a little.
Oh, it's a bird. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I thought we were combining words here. Okay.
Yeah. It's also known as a woodcock or a mudsucker, depending what part of the country you are. But Timberdoodles, I thought was a great name for a women's team, and they great gals, just the funnest women to hang out with. And they started in 2010, and then the youth sport. 1985. In 2010, we started doing youth and high school.
Okay.
And we lost the championship match twice since then. And it's kind of tough with numbers. If we have enough numbers of kids, we always do very, very well. COVID killed us.
Right.
We did not have that many kids that wanted to participate. So we're really looking to recruit high school. We usually have a full boys side.
Okay.
The Oktoberfest is usually a full boys side competing the high school level in the Arizona Union. And then if girls want to play high school girls, they just practice with us and they play for another team.
Okay.
If we don't have the numbers, we play with the Phoenix Firebirds high school rugby team in Phoenix. So if you want to play, we will get you on a team, even if we don't have enough players up here. So we virtually have, if anyone's interested in playing, we welcome you to come out, check our website, and the season starts kind of in September. It kicks off, but it's just like friendly matches, tournaments. It's a lot of fun in the fall, and then it's technically a winter sport. That's when you play the games matter. You play for championships through the union set schedule, and that starts in January. It goes about March. So we encourage at the high school level youth to play as many sports as you can. We really work with the kids. If you play another sport, you're better at rugby. If you play rugby, you'll be better at the other sport, whatever other sport you're playing with. And we definitely work with schedules and whatnot. So that's kind of the background of Northern Arizona rugby.
It's kind of interesting. You mentioned, obviously, COVID, of course, hurt the numbers there. But for those of you who didn't catch it, Kevin's team that he coaches is called the Cobra Fists. He mentioned them just a second ago. And you mentioned that it's the high school team. I want to make it clear, if you can clear that up. When you say it's the high school team, these are high school aged kids. These are not Flagstaff high schools or Coconino high school specific rugby team, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And, for Yavapai County also, if anyone's interested, they get a hold of us, even if you're in Prescott, and we'll try and hook you up to get you involved in the sport.
Okay. Now, where do you guys compete? I mean, you mentioned a couple teams. Obviously, there's a team in Prescott. You mentioned there's a team down in the Phoenix area, but who is a part of the league? Who do you guys compete against?
Well, Arizona has their own union, and Southern California has their own union. West Texas and New Mexico have their own union, and Nevada sometimes they'll play with the Arizona Union or the Southern California Union League or Union. So it's all these unions, and it's union rugby. There's union, there's league, different rules. But we're just talking about union rugby. That's all that's played in the United States.
Okay.
But there's a rugby unions. And so if you get the championship of your union, then you play, the other championships. And we've gone to numerous times. We go to we win our own union. We win New Mexico. And then we kind of been getting hung up, barely losing to Southern California rugby union. Those guys are really good. And if we could beat them, we've come very, very close to beating them. And this is the men's team I'm talking about.
Right.
If we could beat them, chances of winning the national championship are very, very high. Usually the winner of the Southern California Rugby Union, they're in the running. If they don't win the championship, they're there. Okay. So that's our next goal. And we've come very, very close recently.
You talk about some of the traveling that you guys do, and is that universal? I mean, are you seeing, obviously it seems to me like if you want to come out and play, you come and play. I mean, it's there. We'll talk about signups. We'll talk about the website and stuff a little bit later and more specifics about that. But it seems to me like if you have an interest in rugby and you want to be a part of this, go visit the Facebook page and be a part of it. Like we talked about. And it seems like there's a lot of travel involved too, where, you guys are going to New Mexico, you're going to Southern California, which is my neck of the woods. You're going into, different states. Is that universal for all the age groups? Do you have a youth team? Do you have an adult team? You mentioned the two female and male teams. How does sort of the league itself break down or the club itself break down?
Yeah. Well, the high school, we usually stay in Arizona unless we win and move on. And then, of course, there's select sides. If you make the all-star teams, you're going and playing, going anywhere in the country. And we've had numerous kids go on to all-star teams. And the men's clubs, yes, it's usually Phoenix, Tucson, maybe a trip to Yuma, played the Yuma team. And the interesting about rugby is, it's a real subculture. And when you say, about respecting your opponents, respecting the ref, it's a really codified. It's part of our tradition in rugby. The host team, if you're a host team, you have to, after the match, you have to feed, there's a barbecue and a social after every game. The home team has to host a barbecue, feed, and have a social after every match. Huh. And if you need a place to stay, they'll put you up.
Interesting.
So if you're playing rugby, you learn to be a good host and a good guest.
Yeah, well, what a very
and everyone gets together and talks about the game.
And that's obviously a tradition that's been in place for a very, very long time, right? With just the sport of rugby in general.
Yes, it just started from the very beginning. It was always like that.
I'll tell you this, Kevin. We do the broadcast for Mingus Union High School, and I'd love a nice barbecue after the end of a long football game or after a basketball game. I think that'd be something we need to start implementing statewide or school-wide, or everybody needs to start having a little barbecue after a game, because that would be a lot of fun. But what a very interesting dynamic with rugby, because obviously, like I just said, you don't see that sort of cordial. Obviously off the field, I don't want to say that no schools have good relationships with each other, because that's not true. But yeah, that sort of specific where it's like, okay, this is tradition. This isn't like, oh, hey, we're just going to have a barbecue after our game against Bradshaw Mountain. This is something that is traditional in the sport of rugby, and how interesting that you guys have been able to sort of keep that going and not waver away from that tradition. Because I didn't even know that was a part of rugby.
Yeah, it's interesting because. Yeah, you're right. Most sports, you're playing that's your enemy, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
You got to be mean to them and all that stuff. And it's the opposite in rugby. And I think it has to come to a level of competition. We've never had a fight. We've had our big moneymakers, our TENS rugby tournament, and that's coming up.
Okay.
And we have a social. We have a social. We've done it for 41 years now. It's the oldest TENS tournament in the world. It's internationally known. We have teams from all over come and participate, but it's really the kickoff for our unions. All the teams are, and it's a get together because you end up being best friends with opponents you play with.
Yeah.
You play against because you see them all the time, and you play twice a year, and you host them and they host you, and you get to know each other. And it's about respect. And I think that's interesting because, that's a good point, is that we've never had a fight, never any trouble ever, because you get it out on the field.
Yeah, you do.
Right? It's all there. It's a top level competition. And when that happens and it's left on the field, you don't need to bring it back.
No, and you see, like you said, you kind of have this idea with other sports that the enemy, your opponent is your enemy. When in reality, in a lot of ways, it's much like a chess match. Your opponent is should be seen more on the same level as you, and it's whoever's strategy is better to beat the opponent. And then at the end, you kind of go, hey, great strategy, but next time I'm going to beat you. And with rugby, essentially that's kind of what it is. It's basically a handshake. It involves a little bit, maybe more like, beef and pork products, but it's sort of like a metaphorical handshake of, hey, great game. You were a heck of an opponent, and you did a great job. That, if anything, and again, not to say that there isn't sportsmanship, because there obviously is, but that we've never seen more of a obvious form of a more physical form of sportsmanship to go at the end of a match and go, hey, let's tear open this bag of potato chips and talk about it, or hey, let's go to a barbecue after the game and talk about what happened. I love that tradition. I'm serious. I think it should be across the board.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's one of the really things that attracted me to it, because you're instantly in an international subculture. You go anywhere in the world, you find another rugby player, you have certain things in common, which is respect. How to be a good guest, that's how to be a good host.
Right.
And usually you go for it. The rugby players, if you master rugby, reading and writing, you will conquer your world. That is not a joke. You will. And another interesting thing is with the referees.
Okay.
Only the captain's allowed to initiate conversations with the referee. Nobody complains about any calls. Nobody ever yells at the ref. Because one, they barely get paid. They're basically volunteers, and they're doing the best they can. Unlike most sports, there's one ref for the whole game, right? So that's 15 guys on each side. That's 30 people. They're going to miss calls. But you can't, unless you're the captain, you can't initiate a conversation. Only the ref can talk to you, and it's yes, sir, or yes, ma'am to the ref. And so it's all about respect. It's about respecting your opponents too. There's not a lot of showing off after you score. In some ways you celebrate, but you don't try and humiliate your opponent.
Right.
It's those old sayings, right? How it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's true in rugby. That's taken to heart. And if you really analyze that statement, what it really means is that to play with excellence and to be invited to play again and to be invited to play back, meaning you don't cheat. You don't taunt the other opponents. You play honestly and with your best efforts. And that's codified, and that's what we try and instill in people.
You talked a little bit about your attraction to the sport, but let's get into that a little more specifically here, Kevin. I mean, did you play rugby? Is it something that you kind of adopted a little later in life? Where do you and rugby connect?
Yeah, most Americans, I'd never really heard of it until I got to college. Mm-hmm. And a buddy, one of my brother's buddies that he played high school football with was like, you need to come play this game. Because, my brother played college football and it's great, it's fun, but it's like, it's so much time and they're so serious. And no one's having that much fun. No one's, they have fun and all that, but he's like, if you need an outlet, this is it. And that's how I got introduced. That was my freshman year at NAU, the Harvard of Flagstaff, NAU.
You talk a little bit about your brother being a former football player. I mean, do you guys see, in terms of the players who come out to participate with the club, I mean, do you see a lot more of those former football players? I can understand the appeal for a guy who, maybe was an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman for their high school football team, didn't get an opportunity to play football at the next level, or maybe did, and it didn't work out. They're not in the NFL or college or whatever. So would you say that this could be a nice second life to any football player who might want to still play football, but maybe just want to do it in a different capacity?
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. Most of us have played both high school football. A lot have played a little college football. And they want to play rugby because you can play your whole life. There's leagues that you got to be over 35, over 45, over 55. There's leagues that in tournaments that go, you play the rest of your life if you want to. I don't know. I'm kind of done I think now, but you can't play the rest of your life because all it takes is a ball and some cleats.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can play it, and there's infrastructure for that. I mean, high school football is a blast, and we encourage everyone to, who can play and participate, all the boys who can, to play it. And you can do both. You play high school football, you'd be a much better football player. I mean, it really, NFL, I don't know if you've heard, they went to rugby, went to South Africa, talked to the Springboks, the Seattle, I don't know if you knew about this, Seattle football team,
Seahawks? Yeah,
they all went to South Africa to learn how to tackle better and learn how to tackle the rugby way, because it's much, much safer with your head. There's less injuries in rugby than American football.
Right. You guys don't play with helmets or pads in rugby. We should also say that as well.
Yeah, but it's the techniques we use, and there's no blocking, so it's a little different. And it is different than football because everyone's kind of a quarterback at times. Everybody carries the ball. Anyone can end up with the ball. And if you have the ball, you decide if you're going to kick it, you're going to pass it, or you're going to run. So everyone's kind of a quarterback in rugby. And everyone plays defense. Everyone plays offense. It doesn't stop. It's a blast, man. It is good. You got to be able to run. Most games are 80. The regular standard game's 80 minutes. And then rugby, like I was saying, 15s, right? But it also 10s is a big one, and 7s are in the Olympics right now. Like you can watch the 7s games. Man, those are great games. Okay. Wow, you talk about exciting. 7s is really taken off in America too. I think America's going to really like the 7s game. I'm a 15s guy myself, but I really appreciate the 7s game. One tackle and it's a score. Mm-hmm. So if you want to, I would encourage your listeners to check out the Olympic rugby on the Rugby Olympic team. There's been some great, excellent games. So it's a lot of 7s tournaments, not very many 10s. That's why, we do 10s.
Right.
Our team kind of started that tournament because they only had 10 guys. And so they couldn't, they needed a fundraiser and they got a tournament. And then it ends up good because you can mix and match teams. This is another sport where you could borrow a player from another team, and it's no problem. done traditionally. It's like your short players will loan you some players.
There's so much courtesy going on with rugby. Such a barbaric looking sport, is so polite and nice and courteous. It's like looking at a big biker guy and he's driving a Prius. It's just like, it makes no sense, you know?
Well, if you know in life, you figure out that the real guys are the real tough people. They're nice. They don't have to flaunt it. They don't cause trouble. And like just the biker analogy, real tough biker guy, usually a pretty nice guy, doesn't cause any trouble. You don't have to prove yourself. When you're proving yourself on the field, you don't have to prove yourself at outside activities. So no bullying, no picking fights. Nicest guys you'll ever meet. It's interesting.
We were speaking with NAZ Rugby coach Kevin Harris. Coach Harris coaches the Cobra Fists, which are the high school level for the club. So, Kevin, before we let you go, what's going on with the club? Where can people go to get more information? Are there any signups, any camps coming up? Let's just get all the details out of where people can go to learn about this club.
Yeah, great. Thank you. The best place to go right now is for our website, which is northernarizonarugby.com. And it's kind of hard when I did it in Google. It's way down. It's hard to get if you do it in your page, northernarizonarugby.com. That has all our information, all the contacts. So whatever club or whatever team you're going to play for, because NAZ Rugby is one club with all these different teams, and we're reorganizing after COVID, and we're doing that right now. And so that's the best way. Start with the website. Most teams, we have Facebook pages. Our big event is coming up October 9th, is our 41st TENS tournament. And that's all day Saturday at Thorpe Park. And that's a great way to come out, kind of learn how the game's going. If you're interested in playing, we usually start practices. And like I said, we have sevens. We have just fun stuff going on in the fall. But it seriously starts in January. But if you want to get involved, September is a good time to get involved. And most of us, we have orientation for the youth and high school. Most recruiting's at NAU for the men's and women's team, but you don't have to go to NAU. It's a total men's club team. We're the oldest club sport at NAU, by the way.
Okay.
And so we've been around a long time, and that's the best way to get a hold of us. And our big things is the TENS tournament. We do some fundraisers, but a lot of traveling fun tournaments, just friendly games in the spring or in the fall, excuse me.
Go check out NAZ Rugby, and you can check out the Cobra Fists, coached by this gentleman right here, Kevin Harris. Kevin, thank you very much for coming on and telling us about the sport of rugby, and also NAZ Rugby Club, definitely northernarizonarugby.com. Go check that out if you are interested.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Kevin. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Sedona High School girls swim coach Lauren Robinson right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by both new swim coaches for the girls program over at Sedona High School. Below me, if you can see on your screen, is Lauren Robinson. Coach Robinson, why don't you say hi for us?
Hi.
And to my left, or your right, depending on how you're watching the show, is Coach Keegan Moorcroft. Coach Moorcroft, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks.
This is the first time that we've done a three-way Zoom call, so we're just trying to figure out how it goes. But you both enter a new program this year, a lot of experience coaching the Sedona Race Pace Swim Club. So let's start with that. Let's talk about that club. How did you both get involved with it? And Coach Robinson, we'll start with you.
Okay. I've coached for a lot of years, and I did used to coach with the other Sedona team, and I took a break, and I met the head coach of the Race Pace Club while I was swimming at the Hilton and working with a couple of my other swimmers, and watched him coach, and I was intrigued by the USRPT process, which is ultra short race pace training.
Okay.
And as a high school coach in Connecticut, I always believed in quality over quantity in terms of yards.
Okay.
So I started talking with him, and I asked if he needed any help. And he said, well, my team is really small. But when a couple of my kids went over and the team started to grow, he reached out and said, yeah, come join us.
Coach Moorcroft, how about you?
My story is opposite of Lauren.
Okay.
I'm a swimmer. I would say maybe first and foremost, I've been swimming almost my whole life. And I was swimming at the Hilton pool recreationally. And I saw his team practicing there. And I really liked the way he coached. I liked the USRPT style, And I asked him if he coached masters, meaning adults.
Mm-hmm.
And he said no. And I kind of kept pushing the envelope because I wanted him to train me. I'm motivated, but I need a coach. I need someone to push me and to train me and work on my technique. And I knew he was the coach for me. So I pushed him a little bit, and I've now been swimming with him on his team. I swim with a team of 13 to 19-year-olds, and
Okay.
I'm 36. So I've managed to keep up with them. And so Lauren and I entered this team at around the same time, but just with different goals. And along the way, he has taught me more about coaching. I coached the high school swim team, boys and girls, about 6 years ago. And when Lauren approached me about possibly going in and trying to get the co-head coach of the high school team this fall, I thought it was a perfect idea.
Let's talk a bit more about how you two have come together as coaches. Obviously, we just talked about it. You both come from different backgrounds. You both came to the area different ways, got involved with swimming in different ways. But how have you two been able to build that relationship throughout the years as you enter your first year coaching this program? And again, Coach Robinson, we'll start with you.
Well, I was also swimming masters at the time. When I first met Keegan, we were actually swimming up at the community pool under a different coach in a different program. Mm-hmm. And I then transferred over to the Hilton. My husband and I became members of the Hilton, and we kind of started our own little team, and Keegan and I would practice together. And so when she joined the race pace team and I started coaching, I would train myself. I work out at the Hilton, and I also would go up and swim with Coach Sean until I injured my shoulder. But we really developed a bond of going to masters meets together. And I think what culminated it was going to Masters Nationals that was held in Arizona two springs ago, mm-hmm. and having the best time and the best experience. And both of us performed, well, Keegan performed way better than I did, but exceedingly well. And getting to meet people that are in competition from all over the country at all different age groups. You know, my age group is different, obviously, than Keegan's, but we became fast friends over the years just through our love of swimming and coaching.
Coach Warcroft, same question.
I mean, the answer is almost the same. We just were really good friends. We not only did we swim together on this little team that we created at the Hilton, but we coached each other. Yep. We would watch each other underwater and above water. We would help time each other on sets. And we've improved a lot. Of course, Sean has also helped both of us improve our own swimming technique and abilities and coaching abilities. And I believe Lauren is an amazing coach, and I've always admired her abilities with kids and adults. She has a way of motivating and inspiring, but yet not too much to where you think you're going to be best friends with her, but enough to really respect her and to not argue. And that's the kind of coach that the high school needs. We need someone who's going to come in and get this team to bond really well, become friends, to trust each other, to motivate each other, but also to practice hard. And that's hard with a group of teenagers, mostly with whom haven't swam in the past. So getting people in the water in a new sport is going to be really challenging. And I think between the two of us, we're going to have a really amazing season coaching together.
And I mean, if any of you are curious about the credentials that come in with these two coaches, I mean, for those of you who are watching right now on Verde Valley TV or YouTube, you can see the medals behind Coach Robinson. I mean, there's a nice little collection of medals, and I know Coach Moorcroft's got a bunch of them as well. So you both come in with so much experience. Like I mentioned, both coaching the club team here, you guys talked about your relationship starting as, in a friendly competition, kind of learning from each other and competing alongside each other. Now you're stepping into this program to sort of put it into a new direction. And so I want to turn the interview into more of a direction here and talk a little bit about this program that you're adopting. First and foremost, the opportunity comes up to coach the high school. I mean, was that the plan from the beginning to maybe get to the high school level, go coach club for a little bit, and then maybe go coach a high school team? Or was it one of those things where it just felt like it fell right into place and this was the right opportunity at the right time?
You want me to start?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, we'll just keep that. Coach Robinson, you can just lead us off every time.
Well, I coached in Connecticut in the 80s. I started the high school programs, both boys and girls there. They were different seasons. Here, they're the same. I never thought I'd get back into it, but through coaching through the Race Pace Club and seeing our numbers grow, and the coach previous to us leaving the area and the opening occurring, I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to bridge the age group swimmers from both our program and the other program into the high school. And while we know the numbers are down, both school numbers and competitive numbers at the high school, I see the opportunity of the numbers of kids coming up. And so we thought, what a great opportunity to help this program at the high school be a little bit more stable, because they've had coaching change now 3 years ago. Before that, the coach was really steady, but then there was a turnover and another turnover. We kind of really wanted an opportunity to make sure that the kids knew who they were going to interact with.
Okay. You mentioned the numbers. A lot of great individual performances from the Sedona swim team last year at the high school level. But the team, it just didn't work out. Like we've talked, like I just said, the numbers have been an issue. You mentioned it as well. You talk about the club team. Are you guys seeing more high school participation for the club team sort of leading into the high school team? Is that sort of the plan, is to, utilize the club team as more of a developmental aspect and sort of try to get kids to swim more at the high school level?
We think that the two club teams are super successful in Sedona. They are growing bigger and bigger and bigger. The Race Pace team has 3 high schoolers that come from actually 4 that come from Flagstaff every single morning. It's a really dedicated group, and the other program has a dedicated group as well. We feel what's missing, what Lauren already touched on, is having that consistency. Okay. Having that coach to come talk to before or preseason, postseason, and also having the ability to get kids training before season starts. So a lot of Sedona is so small and the numbers are dwindling, but there are kids who want to practice year round. They just don't know about all the programs that are available, or maybe they're 3 sport scorps is what they're called, and they want to participate more in swimming. So I think by having consistent coaching and 2 consistent club teams, it'll inspire the youth to strive towards getting on that high school team. And we'll also have the ability to coach them in the off season, which is really important to get them excited. We also look at the swim team, club club team is hard. It's challenging. There's a lot of practices. It's very physically demanding. But the high school swim team will also be challenging, but it'll also be interacting with other kids their age. And a lot of times there's homeschoolers that don't have that type of interaction. So it'll be nice to get all these kids together and really create a bond and a team spirit. So we're looking forward to that.
And it is a lot of kind of striking that balance. I've talked to a couple swim coaches and some cross-country coaches, those sports that have that individual aspect. And we talked a little bit about sort of striking that balance between individual performance and, of course, team performance. And so I want to ask you both, how do you kind of find that balance as coaches? Coach Robinson, we'll start with you. You've been coaching for a while. How have you been able to find that balance of coaching individual swimmers while also still emphasizing the team aspect?
Well, it's easy to have individuals set individual goals and have them race against themselves in terms of time. And that's an emphasis that I've always used. Don't compare yourself to anybody else but you better be supportive of each other. And the relays, I think, help. The team scoring helps. And the fact that it's a 9th grade through 12th grade evolution, and kids are trying to qualify for states or just support each other. And then the other aspect is creating those opportunities for social time. We used to do an overnight in the gym and get up and practice early in the morning. Friday night overnight, Saturday morning swim. We used to do weekend activities where we got together. I know that the high school previous one of the coaches did overnight relays. So Keegan and I have been talking about a lot of activities that will be fun for the kids to do in a social way that is just as important as practice. And even within practice, different games that we can play or different activities that will help them get to build that bond and be close and support each other through the season.
Coach, can we talk a little bit about some of those team bondings that you just talked about? Any kind of specific, training tools, something you get a little bit more specific about, maybe one or two of them that you utilize?
I think in swimming, the easiest way to bond and to create kind of a competitive dialogue is relays. And one of the easiest relays you can do that also helps with conditioning and strength are kicking relays. So this is where you break up into two teams and your teams are cheering each other on and you're racing and you're having fun, but it's still hard and you're breathing hard and you're getting that heart rate really fired up. That's just one example of about 10 type of games and bonding activities that Lauren and I have ready to go for the season. So we also have a fundraiser that we have in mind that we'll let you know about when the time comes to start planning that. But it's going to be engaging and fun. There's going to be laughter and team bonding. There's going to be camaraderie and a lot of getting to know your teammates, whether you're the best or the worst as far as time. It won't matter. It's all one team. And it's really nice when you're swimming at a meet and your teammates are cheering you on. It doesn't even matter what your time or your place is. It's having that team emphasis. It feels nice as an athlete. It's wonderful to see as a coach. And that's what we're really hoping to inspire this season.
Again, we are speaking with Sedona High School girls swim co-coaches Lauren Robinson and Keegan Moorcroft. You just heard Coach Moorcroft for those of you who are listening on radio. Before we let you go, just a couple more questions here. Where is an area that you would like to see this team improve? I know that the involvement wasn't direct last season because this is the first year that you two are taking over the program, but are there any areas maybe that you've seen with your swimmers that you know are going to translate to the high school level, some struggles, maybe some areas you'd like to improve on?
Just a correction, we're the girls and boys coaches.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that.
Co-ed team. I think our biggest challenge is numbers. And as a result, we spent 2 days during the last week of school in the spring sitting at a table and walking around and trying to recruit kids. And when you talk about motivational factors, I had Keegan and I had a box of 250 individually wrapped Swedish fish. Candy is a nice draw, and I don't care what you say. High school kids are still kids, so you have to remember that. And what motivates them, younger kids, motivates high school kids too. If you think it's cool, they'll think it's cool. And I always learned that from teaching high school too. It may take a little bit longer to get them excited, but if they see you're excited, they'll buy into it, and they trust you, they'll buy into it. So getting the numbers up. Keegan's got a workshop, so I'm going to back to school night next Wednesday, and I will sit at a table with a couple of the kids that were on the team last year, or kids that we know are going to be on the team this year, with a new box of Swedish fish, and we will try to get kids to sign up. And we don't really care if they've ever swum before. I mean, they have to be able to have some ability to swim, but we'll teach them, we'll get them ready. Some of the best programs I've been involved with have brought kids in as freshmen who didn't have very much experience. And by the time they were seniors, they were swimming at the state competition level. So we want to motivate them. We want to make sure that they aren't overly intimidated by joining, and give them a shot, So I see that as our biggest challenge.
Okay. And with that, I think this is going to be a good place to let it off. Coach Moorcroft, Coach Robinson, thank you very much for taking the time to educate me a little bit more on Sedona Swim. We are excited to see you both take over this program. A lot of experience, a lot of expertise with these two, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see the Scorpions back in the pool. Coach Moorcroft, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coach Robinson, thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip.
Best of luck on the season going forward. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. Of course, Mingus Union High School cross-country coach Sierra Tibbs and Northern Arizona Rugby coach Kevin Harris. And of course, these two fantastic coaches in front of me. That is going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. We'll see you next week.